I'm not only smiling because I'm really bad at microphones. I'm also smiling because this gospel reading is amusing to me. And I know it doesn't sound very amusing. It doesn't sound very funny. But to me it is. Because if you notice, Jesus calls out to these men, right? They don't know him from Adam. And he says, come on, let's go. He doesn't promise them anything. He doesn't tell them, come with me and I'm going to give you $1 million. He just says, come with me. And they drop everything and they leave. Now think about that. Some guy who just came on the scene is telling you to drop everything, your family, your job, your money, everything. Come with me. Yeah. No. So I can't really relate to this story very much. But I can really relate to Jonah in our first reading. I don't know if you remember, we're having these few weeks that the readings are all about callings. And last week, Mark talked about how the carpet in front of his rector's office was worn out because he kept coming and going, trying to make a decision whether or not he was going to answer a calling to the priesthood. I have a similar story in that my bishop really wanted me to go to seminary. He had been pushing me for some time, and I kept refusing. And finally, we had come to an agreement that, yes, I did feel a calling, and I was ignoring it. And so one day, I went to my priest's office, and I said to her, I'm ready. Let's do this. Now, she said, okay, that's wonderful. She did not move a finger. She didn't make a phone call. She didn't write a letter to the bishop. She didn't try to make an appointment. She didn't do anything. She just said, oh, that's nice. Well, she must have known that the following day I was going to come and say, yeah, remember what I said yesterday? Never mind. I'm good. And then I came back the following day, and I said to her, okay, really, I'm going to do this. And she said, okay. Again, didn't pick up a phone, didn't do anything, didn't give me paperwork. Because the following day I came back and I said, yeah, never mind. I'm good. We did that little dance for 2 years. It wasn't an everyday thing as it was in the first few days, but it was pretty often that I visited her for that same reason. And then at the end of that 2 years, I showed up on her doorstep again at her office, and I said, okay, I'm ready. Let's start this. She said, okay, have a seat. She gave me some paperwork. She called the diocesan office to make an appointment with the archdeacon, and she did everything that she had never done before that day. Now, I don't know if it was because she saw something in me that I was really decided that day, or she was just tired of doing that dance and said, maybe if I make this legit, she'll stop coming back. I don't know what it was, but I began my process. Now, most priests and deacons that I've met have done that dance. And most people who feel a calling, whatever it is that they are called to, do that dance with whoever it is that they have to do that dance with. There's something about not wanting to do what God calls us to do, because it's usually a hard thing, right? And this is Jonah's problem. I know that in my short time as a priest, I know that most people think of Jonah as, oh, Jonah and the whale. But if I ask them what the story is about, they don't really know much about it. So I'm going to tell you my version of Jonah. So Jonah hears God calling him to go to Nineveh. To go to Nineveh and tell them that they're going to be destroyed because they need to fix their ways. And Jonah, instead of saying, okay, great, God, I'll go do that right now, he goes to look for a boat that's going in the opposite direction. he's going to go to Tarshish. So he gets on this boat, and God decides to send a storm. So it's not to make it too easy for him to get over there. And all the men on the boat start praying to their gods, because their God is not the same as Jonah's God. So they start praying, and they realize that Jonah is not around. And they end up finding him at the bottom of the boat, because Jonah's good. He's sleeping. Jonah has decided that it is better to die than to go to Nineveh. So he's sleeping. He's good with his decision. But the men wake him up and say, hey, you, come on, come and pray to your God, because one of us is doing something wrong, that we're having this problem now with the storm that won't stop. And so Jonah goes up, and they quickly find out from him and through his actions that he's hiding from his God. So they're not, it's probably Jonah's problem, right? But we're not too sure. So we're going to cast lots. Guess who loses? Jonah. So they decide to throw Jonah off the boat, because if they get rid of Jonah, who's hiding from his God, their problem will be gone. Sure enough, as soon as Jonah gets off the boat, and again, he agreed to this, because it's better to die than to go to Nineveh. He gets thrown off the boat, and the storm stops. The storm ceases. And then he's promptly swallowed by a whale. Still better than going to Nineveh, right? So I'd really love to visit this Nineveh. I think is it a modern-day Mosul? So he starts praying while he's in the belly of the whale. He starts praying fervently to God. Okay, God, I'll do this. And then here's the beginning of the rest of the story in our first lesson today. God tells him, go and do what I've told you to do. Go to Nineveh and tell them that they will be destroyed in 40 days. So the whale quickly vomits him on the beach and at Nineveh. And then Nineveh is about a 3-day walk. So he goes about halfway. He gets halfway and he says to the people, you have 40 days and then you will be destroyed. Now, if you've read other parts of the Bible, there's always another part to that message, right? You'll be destroyed, but if you repent, I'll be merciful, right? That's usually God's message. Not the message that Jonah gave. One sentence, in 40 days you'll be destroyed. That reminds me a lot, women, you're gonna relate to this. Have you ever given your husband a message and said, honey, when such and such person calls or shows up at the doorstep, tell them that I had to step out. But I need to speak to them and tell them that this, and this is what I need from them, and to please call me back tomorrow or whenever. The message could have been a 15-minute message that you gave your husband. And then you go on your way, and that person calls or shows up on your doorstep, and what did your husband say? She's not here. This happens to me all the time with my husband. Thank God he's not here. I have to change my sermon for the 12:30. Jonah completely messed up that message. And I don't think I think he realized that he did mess it up, but he was just so fed up. He didn't want to be in Nineveh. He would rather be dead. So he shows up and he's like, yeah, in 40 days you're going to be destroyed, and I'm out of here. And he goes over to the beach, right? But the people of Nineveh respond to this message. They respond, and they know that they've been acting poorly, that they've been a sinful people. And they repent, including the king. Now, these are not God's people. These are not, the Assyrians did not worship our God. They did not worship the God of Noah, just like the men on the boat. But somehow they get their act together, and God forgives them and completely ignores his plan to destroy this place. And what is Jonah's reaction to this? I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were. I went through all the trouble of getting to Nineveh. I would have died first, but I came because you persisted, and then you forgive them. I knew you were going to do that because I know my God. And so he goes to the beach and he sits down. He's fed up. I don't want to be here. And I came and gave this message, and you're not even going to do what you said you were going to do. So God tells him, I know you're upset. I get it. So he sends him this plant that will cover him and shade him from the elements while he's sitting there on the beach. But the next day he sends a worm that eats the plant. Jonah's had it hard. Everything that Jonah went through was much harder than if he had just done what God asked him to do in the first place. I could have saved myself some time. And that carpet could have been saved in front of Mark's rector's office and in front of the office of my rector. Things could have been so much easier. I would have been a priest a really long time ago. That all started in 2006. I didn't leave the seminary to 2012. I could have saved myself so much time. Because the one thing that we have to understand about God is that he is persistent. And when he has a plan for you and a plan for your community, a plan for the world that maybe is going to be worked out through you, he's going to persist. Because there's no one that can do that job that you are called to do but you. Whatever that may be. There were a whole lot of other people that could have done this other than Jonah. A whole lot of other people, God could have said, well, this guy doesn't want to do it. Let me go on to the next guy. But he didn't do that. He kept choosing Jonah, Jesus. And not Jesus either, Jonah. He is persistent, but he is also responsive. So the people of Nineveh responded to the threat, because the way that Jonah said it was a threat, a promise. The people responded, and when people respond to God, he answers, and he helps us. Even those of us who are ignoring a call, he helps us to do the things that we are called to do. Let me tell you a little story. I was supplying at the cathedral one morning for the Spanish service. And, most people who preach at the cathedral preach at the pulpit. I have to be different, and I have to go and preach like this at the cathedral. And I step off the altar, and I look over, and who do I see? But that bishop who had been pushing me to go to seminary. And I thought to myself, oh, this is going to go really bad. This is going to be really bad. I was so nervous that he was there. Who wants to preach with their bishop in the house? And especially one that you owe so much to, that you have so much respect for. Anyway, I preached. It didn't go well. It went so bad that I had to post it on Facebook just to let people know that I knew it was bad. Right? Because I didn't want anybody thinking, oh, she thought she preached a really good sermon and that was horrible. I knew it was bad, and I wanted people to know that. But when I got out of church that day, this woman came running to me in tears, and she said to me, your sermon moved me so much that I have the strength now to go and fix the problems that I have at home. My first thought was, I wonder what part of that sermon she related to. The thing is that when we answer God's call, when we do the things that God has asked us to do, we're doing it for the good of others. And even when we don't realize it, even when we don't think that we have done a good thing, it has touched someone. I had the opportunity that day to know that it touched that woman. But all of you in this room, I'm sure at some point in your lives, have had that moment where you touched someone's life, you made a difference in that person's life, and you may not know it. You may not have realized that at the moment, or even later, or ever. That is the importance of answering that call. God will give us the gifts that we need to do what he is asking us to do. My sermons got better after that, I think. You all will tell me later. I do something that I thought I would never be able to do. Stand up here and preach was something that I was terrified of. And yet I do it week after week. Because God gives me the gifts that I need. It is God working through me for those who I touch, for those who hear my voice. And every day of our lives, we hear a call. I know you all hear it. It could be something as simple as being called to help someone in need. It doesn't have to be so complicated as going away for 3 years to seminary and being ordained. It doesn't have to be that. And I want you all to realize that God will persist until you answer that call. God will be there because he knows that you can do it. Because he is the one that gives you those gifts. It is much easier for us if you just answer the first time. But it's not in our human nature to do that. You know, the other message that I get from Jonah's story is about God's universality. Those people on the boat were not his people. Those people in Nineveh were not his people. We talk about God's chosen people, and those are the Israelites, the Jewish people. And Jonah was a Jewish Hebrew. And he felt that he had enough, that he didn't need to go to Nineveh to go and see some people that didn't care for him, that didn't share the same God as he did, or the same principles that he did. He didn't think it was important. Each and every one of us is a child of God. And so I would say his chosen people. We have a responsibility to the people that are out there that don't realize that they are our children. They are also children of God. We cannot close ourselves up. We have a responsibility because God is the God of all. And God will call us to do the things that we need to do to help the world. Closing borders, closing ourselves to outside influences, closing ourselves off as a chosen people doesn't help us at all. We need to let everyone know that if we are God's chosen people, they are too. Whatever they look like, whatever religion they profess. And maybe one day they'll realize that for themselves also. Amen.